Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. In today's video, there's going to be urgent weather coverage as a widespread severe weather event is going to affect the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. And I need to cover it immediately and upload this immediately so that you all can, you know, understand what's going on, where, when, how, why, and all those questions that need to be answered. So if you have plans Saturday and you live in the uh, really any color, but see, here's the thing. The Storm Prediction Center has a risk level, and it looks like this. It goes from 0 to 5, 0 being like the best weather, or the weather that won't give you the most problems, and then you go all the way from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and then to 5. 5 is that's barely issued like twice per year. It hasn't been issued at all in 2026. A high risk is rare. It means that the worst kind of thunderstorms are expected to occur in a specific location, and usually high risks come with a very, very enhanced risk of tornadoes. Uh, it vary, and the risk of tornadoes could be 30, 45, 60%. We've only seen 60% one time in the 2000s. Um, but but yeah, it could happen. Um, and obviously, I mean, you can try to predict when a high risk is going to occur, but it's unlikely because there's got to be as little uncertainty as possible for a high risk. But so currently this is for tomorrow's risk. This is day 2. What is prognosticated or forecast to happen tomorrow. There's going to be a ton of severe weather coverage that will initiate tomorrow into tomorrow evening and potentially even into Sunday morning, the very, very early hours of Sunday morning. Uh, but multiple severe weather complexes are going to occur. The orange risk represents the most, quote, danger. Uh, the orange risk just necessarily means the risk area where all of the hazards are kind of like combined. The worst types of hazards are there, and there are multiple hazards, uh, usually accompanying an enhanced risk. There are usually multiple hazards, and usually multiple of those hazards are very, elevated and potent and intense and pertinent across the area. So we have an enhanced risk extending from Lake Erie and Lake Ontario all the way down through upstate New York and also through Ohio, most of Pennsylvania, almost all of New Jersey, just just shy of New York City, but I mean New York City could technically be in the enhanced risk by tomorrow. It's not out of the question. But the enhanced risk is for most of Pennsylvania, half of upstate New York, uh, Northeast Ohio, uh, New Jersey, and then it goes down into the Delmarva vicinity. Delmarva stands for Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, if you didn't know what that meant. But now you do. And And so the yellow risk that protrudes outwards after or just to the west and east, smushing the orange enhanced risk in. The yellow is the slight risk. The yellow contains basically all of Ohio, most of Indiana, southeast Michigan, eastern Illinois, and then this slight risk actually goes down into kind of the Appalachians and North Carolina, and then also goes, the slight risk contains New York City, Albany, and takes up the rest of New York, and then also goes into Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, uh, 75% of Connecticut, 3/4 of Connecticut, Long Island, and also basically half, or let's say a third of Vermont. And then the marginal risk, which is the dark green, goes from takes over the rest of Connecticut, Rhode Island, basically all of mainland Massachusetts, if you exclude this little like shrimp tail, basically all of the rest of Vermont, like 4/5 of New Hampshire, and then just a small tiny bit of Maine is in there. And then the marginal risk also includes central Michigan, the lower peninsula, most of Illinois, a small sliver of southeast Wisconsin, southeast Iowa, northeast Missouri, the rest of Indiana, most of Kentucky, um, and then, again, kind of the Appalachians almost. It goes into West Virginia, Virginia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Northeast Georgia, and that's really it. Uh, Now, there is a 5% risk of tornadoes that is issued for basically the whole state of New Jersey. That means that in the state of New Jersey, there is a 5% chance of a tornado that could occur within 25 miles of a given point inside the risk zone. And same thing for most of Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia to Allentown to State College to, Harrisburg to Pittsburgh. They're under a 5% risk of tornadoes. Same thing with Cleveland, Ohio, Niagara Falls, New York, Syracuse, I think, maybe. Uh, I know like Buffalo is in it. I know Binghamton is in it. Albany may be on the crosshairs of it. New York City's in it. Trenton is in it. Um, the whole New York City metro, basically, if you don't want to include Connecticut because the 5% risk cuts off at Connecticut. If you want to exclude Connecticut and just say most of the New York City metro, that includes New York and New Jersey, they're under a 5% risk of tornadoes. And then the 2%, which is the green, the 5% was the brown, includes probably Albany, half of Vermont, a very small sliver of New Hampshire, like kind of half of Massachusetts, almost all of Connecticut, almost all, well, the rest of Long Island. And then the 2% risk goes into the Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and then goes into Ohio, Indiana, and then stops at just northeast of Detroit. So there is a 45% risk of wind. Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a risk of storms for Montana and Idaho. I completely glazed over that. I am so sorry. Anyways, we have a 45% chance of a wind risk. We have a 45% chance. 45% is definitely not something you want to see every day. 45% chance of wind means that there is a 45% chance of wind in general, more specifically from thunderstorms though, within 25 miles of a given point inside the given zone. 45%, the pink, yeah, just, yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm in the 45%. I'm also in the 5%, and I'm also in, well, you'll see a risk of hail. Uh, so I'm in the pink. Most of my relatives are also in the pink. Uh, Philadelphia's in the pink. Trenton's in the pink. Allentown is in the pink. The Poconos are in the pink. Binghamton is in the pink. Buffalo and Niagara Falls are also in the pink. State College, Penn State University, they are in the pink. Harrisburg is in the pink. Pittsburgh is in the pink. Cleveland is in the pink. Wilmington, Delaware is in the pink. Baltimore and Washington, D.C., our state capital, is in the pink. So that means that there is a lot of wind risk to go around. And This is something to not play around with either. You don't see a 45% risk of wind every day unless it's a high-end wind event. Luckily, there's no hatching on it, which means that no 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts are, quote, likely, but doesn't mean it can't happen. Obviously, could be just under the hatching criteria. So who really knows? Who does? And then the 30% risk of wind, which is in the red, contains Detroit, Toledo, and then goes into Ohio, and then clips the little protrusion off of West Virginia that goes north, and then it takes the border between West Virginia and Pennsylvania, and also the border between Maryland and Pennsylvania. It rides that border for a little bit, and then steers off to the south and goes into West Virginia, eastern portion of West Virginia. Excuse me. Goes into the Delmarva, takes up New York City, and then just rides upstate New York northwest until it reaches Canada. The 15%, which is in the yellow, contains southeast Michigan, eastern Illinois, Indiana, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Gary. They're all in this. Gary, Indiana. Uh, the rest of Ohio, northern Kentucky, so Cincinnati, Louisville. I'm not sure. Columbus maybe in the 15% or in the 30%. I have no idea. But either way, Columbus, if I remember correctly, is really close to both of those. Uh, and then the 15% goes into West Virginia, then goes into North Carolina, the Delmarva, takes up basically the rest of Long Island, Hartford, Connecticut, Western Massachusetts, and like a third of Vermont. And then the 5%, which is in the brown, takes up Chicago. It also takes up the Milwaukee Metro, the Quad Cities, northeast Missouri, southeast Iowa, Bloomington, Illinois is in this. Evansville, Indiana is in the 5%. Pikeville, Kentucky is in the 5%. Knoxville, Morristown, Tennessee is in the 5%. Northeast Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, so Raleigh, Charlotte, all that good stuff. Winston, Salem, just there. North Carolina is well, and then you know the rest of the 5% goes basically takes up the rest of mainland Massachusetts. If you want to exclude this fishtail, um, the rest of mainland Massachusetts, the rest of Connecticut, all of Rhode Island, almost the rest of Vermont, half to two-thirds to three-quarters of New Hampshire, and a little bit of Maine. And then there's just a 5% hail risk uh, from, just south of Chicago all the way east into, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, uh, Delaware, the Delmarva, and Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Also, there is a wind risk for Montana and Idaho, and also a hail risk for Montana and Idaho. So, uh, we technically can read Idaho and Montana's risk of severe weather, but obviously our risk comes first because it is higher up on the ladder. So, summary. Severe thunderstorms are expected across portions of the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes into the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, mainly Saturday afternoon into the evening. Some threat may linger into late Saturday night. Ohio Valley to the lower Great Lakes, into the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. An active severe weather day is expected Saturday from parts of the Ohio Valley and the lower Great Lakes into the mid-Atlantic as scattered to widespread storms move through an increasingly favorable environment. A 45% wind risk has been added, resulting in a categorical upgrade to Level 3, Enhanced Risk. The enhanced risk area is a combination of multiple regimes which may eventually overlap. Some areas potentially will see multiple rounds of strong to severe storms tomorrow. A mid to upper level shortwave trough is forecast to move across the northern Great Lakes vicinity through the day before approaching New England by the evening. In conjunction with this shortwave trough, a deepening surface low is expected to move across southern Quebec towards northern Maine, as a trailing cold front moves through the Great Lakes and eventually parts of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. A remnant surface front initially draped from southern New Jersey into western Pennsylvania will lift northeastward as an effective warm front in advance of the surface low and the cold front. As strengthening deep layer wind fields overspread increasingly rich moisture, a broad region from the Ohio Valley and the lower Great Lakes into the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast will become supportive of organized convection and severe thunderstorm potential. HRRR-based forecasts suggest that the smoke will become less prominent from west to east by the afternoon, which should allow for relatively strong diurnal heating and moderate destabilization in areas not affected by early day convection. Effective shear of 35 to 45 knots will support organized clusters and possibly occasional supercells from the lower Great Lakes into the northern mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, while strong heating and steep low-level lapse rates will result in a favorable wind damage environment within the somewhat weaker flow regime across the southern mid-Atlantic and parts of the Carolinas. Elsewhere, convection may be ongoing or else developing during the morning across parts of Pennsylvania and New York within a warm advection regime associated with the returning warm front. Depending on the timing of this convection and downstream heating and destabilization, some intensification of ongoing convection may occur by early afternoon. Additional development may also occur along the southwest flank of early day convection and related outflow, which may intensify and move across the northern mid-Atlantic during the afternoon. In addition to a wind threat, hail and tornado potential may also evolve with any supercell development, given the presence of favorable effective storm relative helicity, or ESRH. Farther north, a broken band of thunderstorms is expected to develop along the cold front and move across the lower Great Lakes region, eventually reaching a larger part of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York by late afternoon or early evening. Additional thunderstorms may develop ahead of the frontal convection, depending on the extent of the heating in the wake of early day storms. Multiple wind damage swaths may accompany this convection, along with some potential for isolated hail. Rich moisture and enhancement to low-level shear and storm relative helicity may also support a tornado threat with any discrete or embedded supercells, especially near the effective warm frontal zone or any remnant outflow boundaries from morning convection. An initially separate regime of thunderstorm development and severe potential is expected to develop along and east of a surface trough across parts of the southern mid-Atlantic into North Carolina. While deep layer flow will tend to weaken with somewhat southward extent, strong heating and steepening of low-level lapse rates will provide a favorable thermodynamic environment for downbursts in damaging outflow winds. Depending on the extent of outflow from prefrontal storms, frontal convection may continue to pose at least an isolated severe threat through the evening as it spreads southeastward. Okay, so now we're going to read parts of Idaho and Montana. Awesome. Blah, blah, blah. A mid to upper level low, initially near Vancouver Island, is forecast to move east-northeast as a shortwave trough across southern British Columbia and I don't know what in the world AB is. I'm sorry. I gotta. My apologies for not knowing my Canadian provinces. Oh, that's Alberta. Sorry, Alberta. So let's start over. A mid to upper level low, initially near Vancouver Island, is forecast to move east-northeastward as a shortwave trough across southern British Columbia and Alberta on Saturday. This shortwave trough will only have a glancing influence on parts of the Northwest and Northern Rockies, but modestly enhanced mid-level southwesterlies will be maintained across the region through the day and through the evening. Widely scattered storm development is again expected during the afternoon, with mixed layer CAPE or mixed layer convective available potential energy, mixed layer CAPE, increasing to near 1,000 joules per kilogram, and effective shear of 30 plus knots, supporting a threat of isolated hail and localized strong to severe gusts. Okay, so that is that. Now, you thought we were done here? No, we're never done with any weather. Weather always keeps us very busy, um, because of course it does. But anyways, so tomorrow we have a slight risk of flash flooding. That really a flash flooding risk on top of the already significant wind, tornado, and hail risk. Now we have flash flooding too. Great. Specifically, this slight risk goes from kinda Allentown-ish to central New Jersey to Long Island and New York City to southern and southeastern Connecticut, basically all of Rhode Island, and southeastern Massachusetts, including the little shrimp tail. There also is a slight risk for Texas into New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, which is associated with the major rainfall from the convection rainfall that occurred in southwest Texas, where over 20, 30 inches of rain had fallen, and at least one person is unfortunately killed. So, yes, someone was killed in Kerr County, Texas, after they were swept away while they were in their mobile home. So, rest in peace to that gentleman, that 65-year-old man. He will be missed, and he will forever be in heaven. One day we will all meet him and say hello. That's just one day. Can't tell when, but we will. But anyways, so sorry for the morbidity. But yeah, there is also an associated marginal risk that's in the green. It goes from the main New Hampshire border, taking up New Hampshire. I'm forgetting states for some reason. Not Montana, Vermont, basically all of upstate New York, the rest in New Jersey, almost all of Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, almost all of West Virginia, all of Delaware, almost all of Maryland, eastern Kentucky, western Virginia, extreme northeastern Tennessee, and all of the rest of Massachusetts, a tiny, 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 tiny sliver of Rhode Island, and the rest of Connecticut. So we're going to read this. We're not really going to read this because it's not associated with what's going on. Okay, so Ohio Valley and the Appalachians to the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. A progressive cold front dropping southeastward will interact with an anomalously moist air mass pooling ahead of it. Atmospheric profiles will be highly favorable for efficient warm rain processes, featuring precipitable water values over 2 inches and deep warm cloud layers. Where daytime heating and mid-70s dew points break capping inversions, prefrontal convection will tap into greater instability and raise the rainfall rates. This environment, along with the concentration of urbanized areas susceptible to fast runoff, provided enough confidence to extend the slight risk farther east from parts of eastern Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey across southern New York and New England. Excuse. Limiting factors to highlighting a more widespread flash flooding threat include fast storm moisture and lingering model discrepancy regarding the exact placement of the heaviest precipitation axes. Farther west through the central Appalachians into the Ohio Valley, a broader marginal risk remains in place to cover what is anticipated to be more isolated concerns. Okay, so that's that. We're going to take a look at the HRRR model really quickly. The HRRR stands for High Resolution Rapid Refresh and is usually very good at what it does, and is probably the best of the best. So we're going to take simulated reflectivity. Now, I have no idea if the 18Z will actually go to, finish the whole event, how it's prognosticated to be. It probably should, but I don't know. Let's see. Okay, no, it won't. So But we're just going to take it through. We're going to take it through. There's convection occurring. There's just very isolated convection occurring across, the mid-tier of the United States, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas into Virginia, West Virginia. Okay, so we're now in Saturday territory. So the warm front should now be making itself known, and there is prefrontal convection. There it is. There's convection coming from the warm front and it's headed through New York, and it actually looks pretty decent. It's got a bow echo and everything. It's curved, so could be some potential damage there. But the storm clusters they don't look that high. They don't have like high peaks. They don't look to be that impressive. But you know, shape-wise, it's impressive. But you got to also look at the peaks of the prognosticated peaks of the clouds, because radar like this, the pinks, purples, all that's cloud tops. It could also be hail cores, but cloud tops usually. It's something high in the sky. It's usually a thunderstorm. Usually the clouds poke up, and it's. I mean, radar. You can see many things. You can see uh, rainfall rates, rainfall intensity. You can also see cloud tops, and it's very important that cloud tops are very high because it's substantial for convection and sustenance. So this model doesn't actually take it through everything, but as you can see, thunderstorms do start to fire, and the cold front is pretty obvious. Um, Cold front is stuff running north of Indianapolis, just into Cleveland and into, Pennsylvania and all that good stuff. Uh, Nice, nice, nice. If you want to continue through it, let's take the 12Z HRRR, right? So there's more convection that has gone through. Obviously, it's different on the 18Z versus the 12Z, but I'm just taking it through, taking it through, taking it through. The cold front is now here. The cold front is now arriving at our doorstep, and boom, takes it on through. So uh, just a recap. So isolated convection occurring in the mid-tier of the U.S. Then the warm front hits, boom, there's our convection. Convection goes into New England and fizzles out. The cold front is now pertinent and is now very noticeable. It's just north of Lake Erie. Then it goes into Lake Erie. Thunderstorms from Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio link up with thunderstorms in upstate New York and what will eventually be Pennsylvania. And then they go, and then they go, and then they go. And then there's a new round of convection that occurs, prefrontal convection, because the front is not there yet. This is the front, stuff that goes from Pennsylvania into New York, and then to continue it through with the 12Z. The 12Z, I understand, looks different, but how else are we going to see in the future? I don't want to wait for the HRRR to update, so we're going to use another one. So again, the cold front, everything is connected now. And so it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. Boom, it goes through our area. And then the convection all fizzles out. There's just a little bit of remnant convection across Virginia and the Delmarva and southern New Jersey. But overall, everything should be completely out of here by Sunday morning. Sunday morning, everything should be out of here. Now, again, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. We have an idea of what is likely to happen, but not what will happen. We can't just look, yes, we can look into the future, but we can't do it as effectively as some people would want us to. I mean, the convective allowing models, they're great. Obviously, there's some improvements needed, but they still do a great job. And they still get stuff done. And this could happen, but what will happen? Yes, it may look similar to this, but it may not truly be this. It may not truly be this image, right here. May not truly be, thunderstorms down here in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. It may not truly be a somewhat disconnected cold front, uh, or at least disconnected storm convection. It may not truly encapsulate the image when we translate it over into real life. Um, however, regardless of what the models say, regardless of what the Weather Prediction Center says or what the Storm Prediction Center says, if you live in the orange, right? If you live in the orange, specifically the orange, the greatest threat exists. There is the greatest threat you can possibly see in a long while is today. Is today, or sorry, is not today. It's tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. Tomorrow, you will likely experience very strong damaging winds in excess of 70 miles per hour, tornadoes, because there is a 5% risk of tornadoes. So you could see a few tornadoes and hail, damaging hail. To what extent of damaging, I don't really know, but damaging enough to warrant a concern. So please, for everybody's safety, be especially aware of what the weather is tomorrow. You need to be aware of what the weather is tomorrow. If you're under a severe thunderstorm warning of any measure, take shelter immediately. Okay, if you're in a sturdy structure, take shelter there. Doesn't matter what severe thunderstorm warning you're on. Could be the, run-of-the-mill regular 60 mile per hour severe thunderstorm warning with quarter-sized hail. It could be 80 mile per hour. It could be 70 mile per hour. I don't know. Hell, it could even be 90 miles per hour. But that's a bit of a stretch. But if something were to occur, any severe thunderstorm warning, take shelter immediately. Okay, if you see lightning, which is probably going to occur, take shelter immediately. Okay? If you hear thunder, take shelter immediately. If you start to feel the pre-convective winds, the outflow boundary, get inside. Once you start to feel the outflow boundary, once you start to feel the winds increasing, it's when you know the storm knocking on your doorstep, and it's gonna slowly inch its way onto your doorstep and then cause chaos. And obviously, you don't want to be out there when the storm causes chaos. You want to be inside, sheltered in an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. If you're under a tornado warning, because that's not unlikely. If you're under a tornado warning, take shelter immediately. It doesn't matter where you are. Take shelter. It's a natural, or at least it should be a natural precaution when you see a tornado warning. It doesn't matter where. Take shelter. However, I do make a suggestion. Before you immediately take shelter, find out where you are in orientation position with the thunderstorm. If the thunderstorm is going north of you and there's a tornado warning for you, but it's going north of you, you should pay very close attention to its past movements. Okay, and you should also pay attention to the rotation, if there's any new rotation that spawns, if there's any old rotation that dies out, because there's a lot of patterns in weather. Usually, when a very powerful thunderstorm rotation dies out with a long tracked supercell, it could spawn another rotation right up again. It's called a mesoscale, a mesocyclone handoff. Mesocyclone, the original one, dies, transfers its energy to another developing mesocyclone, and then that new mesocyclone takes over and could potentially be even stronger than the original cyclone. So it is extremely, extremely, extremely important to always watch the weather. Always have a radar up. Weather-wise, weather front, radar scope, radar omega. Those are four great radar systems. Now, probably the greatest ones for me are weather-wise because that's included on all devices, or Weatherfront, which is included on iOS and also browser. However, not included on Android just yet. However, it's soon to be released. So, also, if you're under a flash flood warning tomorrow, get to higher ground as soon as possible. You can be under flash flood warning, severe thunderstorm warning. If you're under a flash flood warning or a tornado warning, the tornado warning is the utmost priority because flash flooding is not a it's not a quote quick threat. Flash flooding builds and builds and builds. Yes, there can be 2 inches in like 30 minutes, but it still has to build and build and build. A tornado can just wallop right through you without warning, without notice. So if you're under a tornado warning, take shelter and go underground. And then if you're under a flash flood warning, get to higher ground. And same thing if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning. Take higher ground if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning. Excuse me. And go to lower ground if you're under a flash flood warning. It's very important you know this. Because you're going to need to know what to do tomorrow. Tornadoes are very likely tomorrow. 5% risk. Tornado warnings will likely be issued, so please do whatever you can do. If you can take shelter, do it. If not, evacuate from your mobile home immediately if you live in a mobile home. But if you can't take shelter, which usually is in a mobile home, you need to evacuate, you need to leave, you need to make an evacuation plan, escape plan, do something just to get out of the area because in case a tornado does spawn, it will wreck your house, not wreck your family. Okay? Can replace a house, can't replace a human being. Right? So please take all of this information into consideration because it is definitely necessary tomorrow. So please watch the weather, stay safe, stay informed, and have a wonderful day.